Good evening, Keith Tebow with you. Tonight we thought we would start looking a little bit more in detail, if you will, on the happenings in Boston and the federal trial of former Fall River Mayor Jasiel Correia. Of course, many of you know the mayor is been indicted on 24 counts of wire fraud and filing false tax returns involving his Snow Owl app company. And he's also been charged with the extortion and bribery in the cases of issuing non-opposition letters to local marijuana vendors in Fall River. So we're going to talk a little bit about the case today, and hopefully over the next few days as the case evolves. I'm pleased to be joined now by Dan Medeiros. Dan is a reporter at the Fall River Herald News. Dan, how are you? Thank you for joining me.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate it. You know, there's been so much going on in this case, Dan, since it actually started in earnest last week. So for people who may just be watching this and are looking to get caught up, talk a little bit about how the case has evolved since it started. In that, last week, the case was focusing on one portion, the prosecution's portion on one part of the case, and now sort of it's evolved. Talk about why that's probably happening in terms of the prosecution taking parts of this case when they have.
Well, it's broken up into two chunks because the case is so large. There's a lot of charges. There's 24 charges in total. And they mostly fall into two general categories anyway. There's the first part, charges 1 through 13, I believe, are all related to Jasiel's Snow Owl app and the investments that were made in it. And charges 14 through 24 are all about his, those are charges of extortion conspiracy, and bribery when it comes to mostly marijuana companies, and the bribery charges with his former chief of staff, Jen Andrade. And they're kind of breaking them up. The prosecution has been kind of breaking them up into two very distinct chunks because it can get very easy to get lost in the weeds with all of these charges. There are supposedly about 35 witnesses that are supposed to be called. They've called 33 so far. A lot of dates, a lot of numbers, a lot of people that they're going to have to keep straight in their heads. The jury will have to. So it's been helpful the way they have been trying to keep things pretty linear and into two separate, very distinct divisions.
Yeah, so, it's interesting. The prosecution is still, as we're doing this on Wednesday night, May the 5th, prosecution is still presenting its case. They're maybe expected to wrap things up on Thursday, May 6th. From what you've heard from the prosecution side of things, how would you characterize their style and their approach to sharing the evidence they have with the jury?
It's, like I said, it's been very linear, and they've been trying to lay things out very precisely because, again, it can be really easy to get confused. There's a lot of this goes back many years. The first witnesses that they were calling, they are talking about things that happened in 2010, and like now they're going all the way up to 2018, 2019 in some cases, talking about events that happened in those years. So they have been, I would call it hyper precise when it comes to witnesses and providing testimony. Every single thing that comes up and is presented as evidence has to be attested to. They're very diligent about having the witnesses attest to every single document that they see. Is this your handwriting? Is this document accurate? When they read something, is that correct what I said? And they're always trying to generate a very straightforward narrative. So they're saying when it came to Snow Owl, they have they're saying, well, first we have this app. He had the idea. It was these people invested in it. They had the money. They gave him the money. He spent the money on X, Y, and Z, and now they don't have any money. When it comes to the marijuana charges, again, same thing. They're trying to establish a very clear thread of, A, Jasiel has the power, to deliver these marijuana letters. These people come to him seeking to establish these businesses. He demands money. They give it to him. He gives them the letters, and then thus a crime was committed. All very, very straightforward.
Yeah, I know. And, and in many of the instances, if people have been watching, and there have been quite a few people watching because you're able to access this via Zoom, right? In some cases, I believe, I think today happened to look at the participants and there were over 350 on there. I'm sure there have been more and less depending on the day. But the thing that with the prosecutors as well is, and if you watch it, right now, you tend to think, boy, it doesn't look good for the former mayor because, the prosecution's laying out its case. And when you hear one side, you think a certain way. Of course, obviously, we'll hear the defense very soon. But in terms of that evidence, Dan, it appears that a lot of it, again, has been gathered over a period of time, a long period of time. And the slow pace of it appears to be, something that I'm sure the jurors are used to now. And I would think, and I want your opinion on this, that, I'm kind of wondering how much can be too much, I guess. You have to cover all 24 counts. I get that. But in terms of, I guess jury fatigue, I wonder if there's a limit in terms of, when maybe some of the jurors will say, okay, I know with this, where the prosecution's going with this, let's just get to it, right? But they have to build their case.
Right. Yeah. I think I think today they may have pressed their luck a little too far in that department where we heard from Charles Salibi, who is a potential marijuana, but who wanted to sell pot for a company called Greener Leaf at a convenience store in the South End. And this was significant today because this was the first time that we had heard from someone who said that the former mayor directly asked him for $250,000 in order to get the certain documents that he needed to start the marijuana company. This didn't go through any middlemen, and then he also testified that that he paid him directly. He got a stack of money and he gave it to the mayor. That's what he testified anyway. Again, no middlemen were involved. But you can tell the prosecution was excited about this because they also invited Salibi's sister and his father to also testify that, yes, the mayor had been inside the building. Yes, there was a specific safe where the money was kept. You can see where the prosecution is going with it. They're trying to establish, very clearly, this person was in this building. This money was taken from such and such a place and given to this person. So every single other person around that we can potentially use to triangulate, and make as clear a case as possible, yes, this event occurred, they're going to use. But after a certain point, it's okay, we get it, yes, you've already tried to establish that this person was in the building, the money was there, and blah, blah, blah. So let's move on. Do we need to hear from this other person that, yes, I do have a safe, yes, there was money in it, so and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Dan, in terms of the defense now, Kevin Reddington is the former mayor's attorney. And obviously, the prosecution has to build its case to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And Mr. Reddington, who's been around for a while, has, obviously worked on a number of high-profile cases in the defense capacity. I guess his job, in some respects, is to sort of plant a seed into the jury that there is doubt. And has he, has he been trying to do that over the first week and a half?
Well, his, like you said, his job is to try to impeach the testimony of all the witnesses that are being presented. It's also before anybody gets any ideas about what the trial is going to look like as well, and what potential, what the potential outcome may be. You should also keep in mind the defense hasn't presented its case yet. They'll be doing that Friday, I believe Thursday into Friday. But anyway, in cross-examination, Reddington has been a lot more all over the place. He'll tend to bounce back and forward in time. He'll, kind of muddy up the timeline. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but either way, it may have the effect of making the jurors a little bit confused or just knocking them off guard. It definitely has been having the effect of making some of the witnesses feel a bit at ease too. He's had a few moments where he's really gone for some of the witnesses, where you can tell it's definitely gotten them a bit off kilter. But today, again, specifically, he had a lot of back and forth with Camara, who's one of Jasiel's alleged middlemen, Camara has already pled guilty to various charges of extortion and I believe also giving false statements. There was a lot of back and forth where they were really kind of going at it. Camara was offering way too much information. Reddington was not having it. So his style of being a lot more sitting around throughout the timeline and really trying to mess things up is really, in some cases, has been effective.
So Dan, I want to also ask you a little bit about what we know about some of the other aspects of the trial. Obviously we do not know the individuals who make up the jury, but do we have any sense in terms of its makeup, in terms of maybe male-female split, things of that sort?
I believe it is 14 jurors, 12 with 2 alternates. And I want to say that 11 are women and 3 are men.
So that's, I don't know, I'm not a trial consultant, but I don't know what that means in terms of the trial. But it's good to know that there's definitely more women than men. Now, in terms of the judge in the case, Judge Douglas Woodlock, I know he's been there for quite some time. What do we know about the judge? What are your thoughts in terms of how he's handled the case thus far behind the bench?
He's been really good. He's very so far he's had a really good eye for keeping things moving swiftly along. This trial has taken a lot less time than they initially thought. They originally thought it was going to be 3 weeks, and it may end up being 2 for for all of the testimony. So things have moved quite rapidly. He's been very good with handling objections, which there have been a few here and there. He definitely likes to make sure that he's not wasting the jury's time. There was an incident today where the court ended a little bit early, actually, today, because the prosecution didn't have all the witnesses necessary. They had as many witnesses as they thought would be needed for today, but because testimony wrapped up rather rapidly, they had some extra time, and some witnesses that they had scheduled for tomorrow weren't available.
Yeah. Just one final question from me in terms of what to expect over the next 2 days. Again, right now the plan is for the prosecution to rest sometime on Thursday, with the defense starting its defense of the former mayor and presenting its case against the allegations. And again, Attorney Reddington is saying that he should be done by the end of the day Friday. And right now, I guess, as far as we know, instructions, charging, and closing arguments may happen on Monday. And as far as we know, the jurors could take this case as early as Tuesday of next week. But there are a couple of people who we haven't heard yet on the prosecution side who were unsure whether they will show up. One is David Hebert, another one of those middlemen, if you will, in the case. And the other is former mayor's former chief of staff, Jen Andrade, who one of the charges against the former mayor is that he bribed her into giving him half her salary in order to keep her position in government center. Do we expect Jen Andrade to potentially testify as early as tomorrow?
Yeah, I would expect her to testify myself. I know
for a while, both their cases were tied together, and after a certain point, she filed a motion to sever her case from his, and then she pled guilty. So I would presume that deal may have happened because she cut a deal to perhaps testify in this case against Mr. Correia. I don't know, but I would speculate that that's very likely.
Yeah, and is it do we have any indication on whether the former mayor himself will testify in his defense?
I think I had heard when all this started that he might. I don't know where I heard this. I can't remember where I heard it. I think it was just like sort of in our own internal chat at the Herald News. I don't know where that information was derived from, so I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in it. But I don't know. It seems like it's usually not a thing when these types of cases for people to testify on their own behalf. I know, Jasiel Correia is the type of person to want to talk to people. His whole thing was that he loved talking to people. He would convince people of things. Like he's a smooth talking guy. So if I were him, I would want him because I would think, well, maybe I can persuade the jury of, that what I thought I was doing was right, or what I did was in fact right. I don't know. That's just my feeling.
We'll definitely find out, I guess, over the next couple of days. Dan Medeiros from the Herald News, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and we'll hopefully talk again soon. I appreciate it.